And I would like to call Jean and Michaela forward to read the word before the sermon, our father and daughter duo.
Thank you. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun. She was pregnant and cried out in pain.
This is how the birth of the Messiah came about. Mary was found to be pregnant. Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law.
Another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon. Its tail swept a third of the stars from the sky.
But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream.
The dragon stood in front of the woman. She gave birth to a son who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God.
You are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. The virgin will conceive and call him Emmanuel.
The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God.
When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel commanded, and he gave him the name Jesus.
Two different Christmas stories in two different parts of the Bible. Maybe they shouldn't go together, but we've put them together. And they do go together. They're really two sides of the same coin. That word apocalypse, from apocalyptic Christmas, the word apocalypse means to reveal. It's where we get the word revelation. I don't know how many of you have ever watched The Word of Oz. If you haven't, you need to get caught up and watch The Wizard of Oz. But maybe you remember the scene, that moment when the great and powerful Oz in his booming voice and roaring with smoke and fire, and then suddenly Toto grabs the curtain and pulls it away. And Oz booms out, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." Oz wants to hide the truth behind the curtain, but the book of Revelation does the exact opposite. It pulls the curtain back, gives us a peek into what's happening behind the scenes. It invites us to see the world as it really is. And in this moment, when Jesus is born, to look beyond the manger, and for us to look beyond the Christmas lights, the sentiment, all the commercialism, the Hallmark cards, look past that to what's happening from a heavenly perspective. There's a cosmic conflict taking place, and we're part of it. That means there's actually real danger. There are real enemies that we're up against. There's real violence. And Revelation shows us behind the manger scene even. There's a woman crying out in labor, a dragon waiting to devour this child, a Messiah ascending to his throne, and a people fleeing into the wilderness under God's protection. Joy and danger, celebration and threat, salvation and resistance. This is the Christian life, isn't it? Yes, the victory is secure. Victory is guaranteed, but we still experience the pain of war this side of eternity. If you don't believe that, you haven't been paying attention, or you're not being honest with yourself. We need to admit that this side of heaven, we still experience sorrow, disappointment, loss, even though we follow Jesus, this promised Messiah. Now I know, Christmas morning, or in churches, we often say, peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That's really cute, Jesus, but some of us had to go work in the morning the next day. And we experience all the troubles that this world dumps upon us December 26th. And so for many of us, probably all of us, Christmas holds both grief and joy together. How does that work? Revelation holds both. Your life holds both. And we must name the paradox that is here between Matthew and Revelation. The battle is real, but so is God's peace. Can we celebrate the fact that our victory is secure? Yes, we can. But for whatever reason, and for these reasons, it's possible to experience joy, celebration, sorrow, and grief all together at the same time, mixed together. How can we possibly carry all that? We're not designed to carry all that. But here's the good news. I do know someone who can carry that for you. So, if Christmas holds both joy and battle, both hope and grief, then the question remains, how do we actually live in that tension without being crushed by it? Revelation peels back the curtain and provides this cosmic picture for us, but Matthew shows us how one man, Joseph, learned to walk through the chaos by listening to God. So let's step into the story with him. Let's slow down, breathe, enter the scriptures, and see the way Joseph entered his own crisis with an open mind and an open heart, and then learn to process hearing God's voice in a noisy world. So let's begin by looking at Matthew 1:18. If you have a Bible, you can turn there, and you can have your finger in Revelation 12 and follow along with me. Matthew 1:18 says, "This is how the birth of the Messiah came about." Now, for Joseph, this birth was wrapped in emotional chaos. His world was falling apart. The woman that he's betrothed to is pregnant, and he knows he's not the father. See, in first century Palestine, this betrothal was a legal transaction. It worked very much like a marriage. You would not break an engagement. To break an engagement would be tantamount to divorce. And first century Jews looked upon Joseph as what they would call a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a righteous man, a man whose life is braided with Torah. And Joseph was very, very righteous. He followed the food laws, the purity codes. He attended synagogue every week, not so different from those of us who follow Jesus and Christianity like a religion. We attend Sunday services every Sunday. We worship God every Sunday. We obey the right rules. We do everything right. We got the fish on our car. And we're looked upon as everyone else, by everyone else, as righteous. Joseph saw himself that way. And yet life was not working out very well for him. Have you ever felt that way? Come on, Lord, I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. Why is this so hard? Joseph's life was broken apart at least in 3 areas. His relationship with God was disturbed. Think about it. He probably prayed, probably for life. His mom was praying, I guarantee you, for the right woman to come along and be wed to him. Lord, I'm following you. I know it's Mary. I know it. I know it. I know it. And then all of a sudden, boom, surprise, she's pregnant. Not exactly what you thought would happen. And his relationship with God now is put in doubt. Lord, can I really trust you? Can I really trust you to lead me? His relationship with Mary feels broken. Really? God's the Father? You expect me to believe that? Are you lying? Have you been unfaithful? Is this some kind of betrayal? I want you to sit with where Joseph is at. And even his relationship with himself is shaken. Man, who am I? I thought I was a righteous guy. What does obedience look like in this situation? Am I even a tzaddik anymore? And how can I remain one? So what does Joseph do? Like a good godly Jew in that day, like many good Christians today, he turns to the scriptures and he begins to search. But scripture alone will not restore him to wholeness with himself, God, and others. He knew the law, probably better than we do, probably had it memorized. He knew the prophets, he knew righteousness, but he lacked shalom. Shalom is the Hebrew word for peace. And it's a word that means more than our idea of peace. Our idea of peace is the absence of conflict or calm. Shalom is much deeper than that. It's making everything whole. Shalom is all our relationships properly aligned. Shalom is inner cohesion. Shalom is courage rooted in God's presence. Complete wholeness. Joseph is turning to the scriptures. He's digging. It says he was a man of the law. He was faithful to the law, but he began to see that the word alone was not enough. And he began to, the scriptures say, consider or ponder. There was a wrestling going on. Wrestling, prayer, leaning into not the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. That's what Joseph was going for. He was not looking for a way out of his circumstances. He was looking for a way through them. He didn't want to divorce Mary and bring shame upon her. He also didn't want to bring shame upon himself. And he didn't know what the answer was. But then God intervened. And you know the story. A dream. Not a vague dream. Have you ever had one of those dreams that was just so clear, so sharp, you asked yourself, where did that come from? Last night's pizza? No. For Joseph, it was God. And I want you to listen to the words that God says to Joseph. They really penetrate to the core of his identity, reorienting his relationship with himself and others. Verse 20 says this, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid. That's his identity. Joseph, you're a son of David. And I want you to know what's at stake here. Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. And that reorients his relationship with her. His mission, verses 22 to 23. I'm going to read this because I think it's that important. All of this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son. They will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. And now, Joseph's idea of fatherhood, even his mission in life, his destiny, has been reoriented. Everything has been brought together. It took the Word and the Spirit's work to bring true shalom into his life. And now he needs to consider his reputation, the society around him. They would look on him in shame. His title or his reputation as a Sadiq would be in jeopardy. And notice what the scriptures say. He obeyed. He listened. He laid down his reputation and said to himself, it doesn't matter what society thinks about me. What matters is what God thinks about me. So sometimes God speaks in ways that defies and disrupts our expectations. Years ago, I was single, and I was tired of it. Now, I don't know if you're like me. Do you remember being single? Right? Every girl you see that's like halfway decent looking is a potential mate. And if she's a believer, that's gold. We're going to start praying. And so I found myself in Nepal. I had a lot of different teammates. Some of them were pretty nice looking. And I constructed a list. I know. There were 5 on my list. Now I know you ladies are like, oh my gosh. And the guys are like, only 5? Oh my gosh. But I narrowed it down to 5, and I decided I was going to fast and pray. And I did that. And in the midst of that came a small whisper into my heart. Not an audible voice, but a voice in my heart. You can marry Anju. I'm like, she's not on the list. God defied my expectations. And like Joseph, sometimes the voice of God overturns our expectations, even busts us out of our comfort zones. And he invites us to obey a path, walk a path that's not always easy. He calls us into something deeper, holier, and bolder. But what Joseph didn't know is that in the midst of his conflict from an earthly perspective, there was a cosmic, heavenly conflict from another perspective. So let's dig into Revelation 12, peel back the curtain, take a look at this. Christmas story from another vantage point. We meet a woman clothed with the sun. Now I want to be clear, this isn't Mary. Well, it is, but it's more than just Mary. See, verse 1 says that this woman is a sign. She's not merely a symbol for Mary or even just Eve, but she represents salvation history itself, struggling toward that point in time that would bring us the Messiah. And the forces of good and God's will were at work, moving history along to this point. Additionally, this woman represents the people of God who were looking forward to the coming Messiah, and also represent us looking back on the Messiah that came. The people looking forward to the Messiah have been looking forward to that birth since Genesis 15. This is when God spoke to Eve and said to Eve, I will put enmity between you and the woman. He's talking to Satan here. He's talking to the serpent, the same person that is represented by the dragon in Revelation. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. All of salvation history moving toward this moment, the moment when the promised Christ entered the world. And this brings us to the second sign, the dragon. He's not going to have any of this. He represents Satan, but more than Satan even. Satan working through the kings, empires. We're talking Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, bent on wiping out the Jewish nation. Why? So that the Messiah would not be born. Even Herod attempted to wipe out the Messiah. Do you remember? Sending in his armies to kill all the children in Bethlehem under the age of 3. Any earthly power and influence that sets itself up against God and his purposes, well, the dragon's behind that. His goal is to stop salvation history from unfolding. And this struggle, according to verse 4, shakes the heavenlies, strikes a third of the stars out of the sky. Some people think this is Satan and his demons, but not necessarily. It simply means that all the heavenlies were shaken. This battle is cosmic in proportions. And now the dragon has been defeated. I can hear the voice of the man in black talking to Inigo Montoya. Get used to disappointment. But he's full of wrath. And the dragon does not chase what does not threaten him. So what does he do? He has turned his fury toward us. He's coming for us now. And so this woman, now representing the people of God, flees into the wilderness. Now in the Old Testament, the wilderness sometimes represented the punishment of God. If you remember the Jews and the Exodus, they wandered for 40 years. But that's not what's happening here. Now this wilderness represents a place of protection. God is saying to us, I am going to secure peace, shalom in your life. I'm going to protect you as spiritual exiles wrapped in divine intimacy. So what does Revelation tell us? It tells us that the child wins, the dragon loses, and the woman, the people of God, is kept safe. Yet this side of eternity, the battle continues, doesn't it? The war is not over, even though victory is secure. And so the stories, Matthew and Revelation, are two sides of the same coin. When we sit with Joseph's fear and with Revelation's cosmic conflict, something happens. The scriptures are no longer just these ancient stories stuck in the past, but they come to life, and they are a mirror that reflect who we really are, where we're at in our relationship with God, and what our eternal destiny is truly all about. So now let's move from the process of reading the scriptures, like Joseph struggled with, into the spirit or presence of God. An apocalyptic Christmas reveals that the battle is real, but so is God's peace. We experience that peace when, like Joseph, we learn to hear God's voice and follow it with courage. Let me illustrate this with something simple. If you're stuck on Christmas presents to give me, here's a good one. Noise cancellation headphones. Trust me, I need it for my family. Okay? When you put these things on, the noise doesn't actually disappear outside, does it? The world's still loud, the family's still chaotic, the turmoil is swirling around you, the dragon's roar is still there. But when you activate that technology, something happens. The noise cancels out the power over you. You hear only what matters, the music you're listening to. You can focus again. The roar becomes background static. And that's what the presence of Christ is like in our lives. Jesus doesn't necessarily remove all the noise and turmoil you're experiencing, but he does cancel out its power. He enables you to hear the voice of the Spirit even when the dragon is raging. So Joseph experienced shalom when he listened and obeyed. That's sometimes the missing piece. Mary experienced shalom when she surrendered, trusted, and obeyed. And we as the church, we experience shalom when we listen to the voice of Jesus in our wilderness experience, and we still obey him, even when it's hard. And once we realize that Christ is present right here, right now, in the wilderness of our own lives, the question naturally becomes, what do we do now? What do we do with that? We experience God's presence, and as we experience his presence, I would add that whenever we see that happen in Scripture, it's always followed by action, by obedience. Revelation gives us assurance that that shalom, that peace, is protected in the wilderness. Matthew provides the example of how to get there. And so if God is speaking, how do we position ourselves to hear him? If God truly brings peace, he brings shalom to our lives, how do we make room for that? How do we enter into that? Well, let me give you and offer you something practical. 3 practices that you can take away. This is what we're leading up to. Again, an apocalyptic Christmas reveals that the battle is real, but so is God's peace. We experience that peace when, like Joseph, we learn to hear God's voice and follow it with courage. So practice number 1, honest Advent. What do I mean by that? I mean, don't fake your joy. Don't hide your sorrow either. Admit what's going on inside of you. Bring your grief, your disappointment, your stress, your anxiety into the presence of God. Bring it to Jesus. He can hold it. Bring all of who you are to God as best as you understand him, even in the midst of turmoil. In 2004, maybe you remember, the tsunami hit India. I was in Nepal, not that far away. Thousands died. Hundreds of thousands died. I had a friend that was stuck in Thailand, and I wasn't sure if he was alive anymore or not. Fortunately, God protected him. 2 realities collided, though. Joy at Christmas, and then the very next day, this tsunami. Devastating loss. And if we're honest Advent means we admit sometimes our lives feel like that. There's some Christmases that feel like a tsunami is washing over us. Do we fake the joy? Or do we admit it before the Lord and then hand it to him? We need to understand and truly believe by faith that Jesus meets us in the midst of that tension. That's what I mean by honest Advent. Be real. Practice number 2, Joseph-like listening and obedience. Sounds good, not so easy. And so I would say slow, tentative obedience. It's kind of like when you're going into the ocean or a lake or a pool and you're not sure how cold it is and you just kind of put your toe in there a little bit. That's tentative obedience. Can I really trust this Jesus? Try it out. It's thoughtful obedience. It's courageous obedience. Thoughtful obedience might be wading into your knees. Courageous obedience, when you just say, to heck with it, I dive right in. You dive right in. Joseph could have obeyed the law outwardly, and he would have been considered a Sodic by society if he had divorced Mary quietly. That's the letter of the law. He was in his right to do so. But would God have called him a Sodic? No, that's not the spirit of the law. And we need to make the same choice. Public approval or divine calling. Comfort or courage. Reputation or righteousness. So Joseph listened, he obeyed, and then Shalom entered back into his world. And still society looked down on him. And this brings us to practice number 3, what I'm going to call apocalyptic awareness. That's an interesting one. What does that mean? It means that we understand that we are in a spiritual battle. That we're aware, even if we can't see it, we peel back the curtain by faith and we realize, you know what? I have an enemy. And he wants to take me out. Not just this Christmas, but 24/7. Sometimes we're tempted to trivialize the battles that we're in. Your battles are not small. The enemy chips at you, chips away at you, one piece at a time, right? Not just necessarily raging like a literal dragon ready to gobble you up. He would if he could, but he's going to chip away at you and chip away at your faith. Your temptations are not trivial. Your discouragement isn't random. And so heaven, we need to understand, takes our plight, our story, more seriously than we do. And when you live inside of Revelation 12, you wake up to the reality that, well, you matter, your life matters, your prayers matters, your obedience matters, and the dragon is raging precisely because he's already defeated. We need to come to grips with the reality. I know it's trite, it's cliche, but it's true. We do not fight for victory, we fight from victory. The dragon lost once, he will lose again, guaranteed. Guaranteed. And as we practice these 3 things, we must not forget the strength doesn't come from us. Joseph obeyed because he heard from God. The woman endured because she heard from God, and God protected her. The church stands because Christ reigns with an iron scepter, as Revelation says. Our practices open us up to God. They don't make us righteous in and of themselves, but they create space for God's presence, and we enter into that. And the promise of Christmas rests solely on Jesus and what he has done for us, not our efforts, not our practices. And so again, we enter into the reality that Christ has already won, the dragon has lost, and this peace, this shalom, is waiting for you to claim, waiting for you to grab onto it. So pull the curtain all the way back. When we pull the curtain all the way back and we peer into Revelation 12, we see a child. And that child's destiny is the cross. And the dragon continues to rage. He raged from Bethlehem to Calvary, from Herod to the Pharisees, from the wilderness temptations to the betrayal in the Garden of Gethsemane. He tried his best to devour the Christ child. He tried again at death. And on the cross, Jesus allowed himself to be swallowed so he could slay the dragon from within. He absorbed the fury of the enemy. He broke the accuser's power. He crushed the serpent's head, fulfilling Genesis 3:15. He rose in unshakable victory. Why? Here's the miracle of it all. He accomplished all of this so you wouldn't have to, because he knew you couldn't. The one who crushed the dragon now carries you. And he can hold all your Christmas joy and all of your Christmas grief all at the same time. He brings the tension together. And really, this is what Christmas is about. It's about all of it. Our total experience, the human experience. Lying there in a manger, not succumbing to the chaos swirling around him, but instead rising up, slaying the dragon. This is Christmas. It's not the sentimental Hallmark Christmas. It's not the sanitized version of Christmas, but it's cosmic in scope and breathtaking in what it accomplishes. Because this child becomes the victorious king. And this Christmas, he's inviting you to the greatest gift exchange you could ever find yourself a part of. He has shalom as his present for you, but he can't drop it into your hands if your hands are already filled with your own gifts that you're clinging to. He's inviting you to dump them. He's inviting you to give your life for his. He is inviting you to give your hurt for his healing. He is inviting you to give your guilt for his righteousness and your weakness for his strength. That's the peace of Christmas. That's the shalom that Joseph found, the shalom that Revelation promises, and the shalom that Jesus offers you this morning. So let's pray together.